Hi, welcome to this video overview of our support services within the Practice Lab platform. So what I want to do during this short video is kind of focus in on some of the elements we have within the settings menu, how they affect the usage of the Practice Lab itself, what do they actually mean. So we'll go through and touch everything and show you the impact of that change or the switching between the two different elements. So let's jump in and have a look at the settings menu. So for those of you who've kind of had a view of the previous platform, you'll know that the settings items were quite difficult to find. What we've done now in the new platform is we've actually made a little tab at the top of the page where you can go and change the settings that you need to. So as we break these down into these different elements, so personal information, email address, this is used if we need to communicate with you in any way. So in the case of a general system notification, we can send you an email. In the case where lab capacity is potentially overloaded, you need to get notified when that becomes freed up. That's why we use the email address function. For those of you who are logging in manually, you can also change your password within the settings menu. So that's just a case of clicking on that. I'm sure we've all seen this, old password, new password details, and then confirm that. In some cases, that's not necessary for some of our customers who log in through a single sign-on process. So as we look at the devices, so the devices items are broken into a few different things. Remember, alongside each of the item names is a small information icon. So if you go ahead and click on that, the one that's next to server auto login, it'll tell you what that feature actually does. I'm going to show you in this particular video the impact of that, but if you do get stuck while you're working through it and you don't quite remember what the video said, just click on the small info icon and you'll be given the relevant details. So you'll notice every time I've connected to the labs in some of the previous videos, we are presented a desktop already logged in. So by default, in each of the practice labs, you'll be logged in as the administrator and no need to provide any passwords. However, in some cases, within the lab guide, there may be detail where you need to test logging in as a second user. This is where the server auto login feature comes into play. So you would be requested within the lab guide to come and disable the auto login. So I'll go ahead and disable that. And the settings are kind of switched between the two different labels, and how you know which one is actually on is whether it's kind of green or white. So green means that particular item is enabled, and to switch it, you click on the white space. So I'm going to disable auto login. You can see to the right here, I have a server already powered on. And now I'm going to connect to that device. And you'll see at this point, I'm now requested to put in a username and password. Again, the details for this will be in the lab guides. I can go ahead in this case, let's just connect. I wasn't quick enough. I'll put in password, and I'm presented with the desktop. And to turn that on again, I enable it, and when I hit connect this time, you'll see that the desktop just appears. Now, in terms of technology of presenting the desktop itself, we support two different connection methods for the remote desktop clients. By default, if your browser supports it, we will enable the HTML5 option. However, we do have a Java client as well. And as Java starts to be phased out of support for a number of browsers, there are some additional steps you may be required to implement to actually activate the Java client. That being said, HTML5 by default. To switch between the two, again, just literally click on the item you want. In this case, because Chrome doesn't support Java in its native version, I can't actually switch to that. But if you are connecting using Internet Explorer or Firefox that do support Java, you'll notice if you've got Java installed, you just switch between the two, you hit the connect button, and it reestablishes the connection using that particular technology. Now people ask us, well, what's the difference between the two? Why do you have two different clients? So HTML5 is our go-to connection method, and it's because it's a lot more friendly in how it can connect to different devices. So we have tablet support, and to enable those type of things, we need the HTML5 client. For those customers who are working in more secure environments or connecting through proxy servers, the HTML5 client is a lot more friendly in kind of navigating those particular security services. The benefit of the Java client is it does give you a little bit better performance. Being a more mature technology, it's been around for longer, offers a slightly better performance session. However, it comes with its own overheads. You have to have Java installed. For those of you that have got it installed, you'll know that it gets updated on a regular basis. So that's the pitfalls of it. HTML5, it's not to say that is slow, but if you are looking on very slow internet connections, it might be worth looking at the Java client as an alternative, but the HTML5 client should suit most of the connection types. Again, you'll notice in the new environment, and in our previous platform as well, the desktops are anchored to the page. In some cases where you may have multiple screens, you can actually launch the device window in pop-up mode. So if I enable that, you'll notice now it's been released from the console. I now have a separate window that I could place on a different screen. I then interact with my lab guides and work with the two. So just a little bit more flexibility. If I close that and I disable the pop-up mode, you'll now notice it's back in page. I'm just going to go ahead and start up a second device to show you some of the other items that we have within the settings menu. So the next one is device view style. So if you've had a look at some of the other videos, you'll notice you have the ability to scroll through multiple devices. Once the second server comes up in this lab, I'll actually show you what that means. But you have the ability to switch between scrolled, where you can simply in the same page see the multiple devices, or to a fixed mode, more like the previous platform, where as I select a server, I'm then focused on that console, and that's how I navigate between the two. But as the second device comes up, I'll come back to that and show you exactly what that means. In the platform, we've made a couple of enhancements, and the first one being device links. So if I bring up one of the lab guides, you will notice that some of the server names are now presented as hyperlinks. And what that gives you the ability to do is, while you're reading through the lab guide and you've asked to do some work on a particular server, and let's go ahead and go into some of the content, and we find a link that is referencing the domain controller. So what I can do now is, as I select the link within the content, the learning content, I'm focused on that view. And it's just a way to make sure that when you connect or when you see the device name within the content, you're focusing in on the right place to carry out that work. Now that gets disabled if that's kind of a preference that you don't feel is useful to you. In the settings menu, you can simply disable that. And if I go back into the content, you'll now see that what was a hyperlink before is now just plain text within the document. Now this will be kind of up to your own discretion to see whether you like that function or not. I said we'd go back to the scroll view or the device view. So as you can see, I've had the second server come online, and I can simply use the scroll wheel to go between the two devices. Now this is great if you're checking a setting between the two servers and what the impact could be between them. However, if you prefer to view in fixed mode, select fixed, and now the scroll wheel doesn't work, and I have to select each of the devices that I want to actually go and focus on that, and it stays anchored in the page. So I'm going to change mine back to scroll view, and there we go. You can see all the devices in the one panel. Going back to the platform item, so we've discussed the device links, HTTP and HTTPS. This is simply the way we connect to the platform from the client side. So we support the two different options. We will default to HTTPS, trying to be more secure, but it does depend on what is sent to us. If you're coming in from a learning management system, it may only support HTTP, so you have the ability to switch between the two, and it is simple as clicking one or the other. One of the new features that we've introduced is within this platform is some accessibility components. So by default, the lab platform can be navigated using a keyboard only, and some of these key terms behind the scenes have been inserted. However, if you are required to use a screen reader or something with additional enhanced support for accessibility, you come into the settings menu and you can enable these again by selecting the relevant option, and you'll notice that a pop-up has appeared. That's because with the advanced accessibility mode, we need to launch the servers in pop-up so that we can actually focus on there and you're able to navigate just using the keyboard. Now, it doesn't look like much has changed, and one of the other items that works in conjunction with the advanced accessibility modes is the high contrast mode. So as I turn on high contrast mode, you'll see that the contrast has changed of the platform, and it's kind of an additional feature that works alongside the advanced accessibility features, and then the ability to change the size of the text. So as you can see now, we have large text, high contrast mode, and the advanced accessibility items enabled. And to change those back, go back to the default view in terms of size, turn off high contrast mode, and we'll turn off advanced accessibility pieces. Now, we've touched on font size. For the interim, you will have access to revert back to the current platform in terms of its viewer. That won't be around for forever, but in some cases, while you're getting used to one or the other, you have the ability to switch back to the old interface and then back to the new one. Out to lunch, this feature is something we've had around for a little while. In the case where you are halfway through working in a lab guide and you need to pop out to get a sandwich, have to go to a meeting, have to take a phone call, you can enable the out to lunch. You select I'm going out. You'll now notice that the lab is in the lab timer is changed to kind of out to lunch mode, if you like. Your lab now will be reserved in its current state for 90 minutes. When you come back from that errand, you click on the timer and you switch back into normal working mode. And with the timeout, we have a 60-minute timeout, and at the end of that period, you are given a notification that which kind of asks you if you're still busy in the platform. As long as you respond, yes, I'm still working, then we will never log you out. However, in the case where the sessions have been abandoned, obviously we need to reutilize the resources available to all the students and users of the platform, so we'll log you out. But as you become more familiar with the platform, it's simply a case of clicking on the auto logout timer, and that'll reset you back to 60 minutes, which will kind of save you getting the notification. While I'm kind of here in the tools menu, just a couple of other things, a little refresher on how to start up a device, how to connect to a device. In each of the lab guides, you'll be told which devices need to be turned on. In some cases, it may be one. In some cases, it may be all of them. To turn on a single device, you hover over the server name or the workstation name, and you click power on. And then you'll notice that the little status bar changes to busy, and a blue indicator comes across the busy tag to let you know that the server is or the workstation is in the process of being booted up. In the cases where you have to power everything on, we now have the power on all feature. That means if I click this button, and I'm going to go ahead and do it, on a single click, you can turn everything on, and that will be defined to you within the lab guide itself on how many devices you need to do, but you now do have a single click power on all option. just to focus in on some of the other items below a server or workstation, let's just go through these individually. Power off, pretty straightforward. That is turning the server off. However, when you do turn that off, it does lose all its configuration. So in the session, you'll only use this feature once you no longer need access to that device. Suspend is a feature that will be highlighted to you in the lab guides. Essentially what it means is, if we have a quick look in the lab guide and we have a look at the lab diagram, you'll see from the IP addressing scheme that these are on a mini network and they can all kind of communicate with each other. In some of the content, we may want to simulate a failure of one of the devices and what the impact would be on the rest of the servers in that mini network. So I could go ahead and suspend the domain controller, for instance, and what impact would that have on the rest of the servers? Will I still be able to log in and use those type of services? And that's what it's there. It essentially hides it from the network without destroying any of its configuration. Reboot. So the reason we have a reboot function within the menu item of a server and not just using the operating system reboot is this gives us the ability to manage that process. So the front end, the website, if you like, has the ability to shut down the server, query it as it's starting up again, and present it automatically to you once it becomes available. By doing it through the operating system, there's a little bit of a disconnect between the front end and the back end. You can still, however, choose to use this option. All that you would need to do is use the refresh button to query and check when that device becomes available. In some cases, if you do the operating system reboot, the console may not connect by default. So if I go ahead and just show you what that means, so if I log out, you may actually be presented a screen where the device is not connected. Now, that doesn't mean that the device is not running. We can see it's powered on. It's got its green little indicator here, but the console's not being displayed. In that case, we may have done an operating system reboot and the front end doesn't know what state it is. I could use the refresh function, or I can hit connect from the name bar, or connect from the menu item here. So once I can hit connect, I re-establish the connection back to the desktop and I can continue to work. One of the final things to just kind of mention in the items below each of the servers is the reset function. So the reset function is the safety net for you. So in the practice lab world, we say to you, go and experiment, go and push the boundaries of your knowledge and learn these new things. You can't break it. That's the reason we built it, is we want you to experiment and try things out. And if you do get into a muddle and for whatever reason the server stops responding, use the reset function. The reset function shuts the server down back to its default configuration, powers it back on, and then you can run through those steps again. Very important, in terms of skills development is, you are going to make mistakes. Learn from the mistakes, repeat to make sure you don't make the mistakes again. Now, in the case where the whole lab becomes maybe out of sync because, again, focusing on a domain controller or something that controls authentication services, you may become out of sync with the rest of the lab. In that case, don't become stressed and kind of worried that it's not working. Best thing to do is do a reset all, shuts the whole lab down to its original configuration, starts it back up, fresh slate, and then you move on from there. And then finally, what we have at the bottom right-hand part of the tools bar is the logout feature. Once you've completed your session, you then just hit the logout button, shuts down the lab to, in the background, reallocates it to the pool, and then someone else can then reutilize that lab. If you do get stuck, and it happens either through a connection not working or not quite understanding how each of the functions work, either within the settings menu, we have the help and support icon, which is located at the top menu bar. There you have access to resources to help you understand and fix, troubleshoot some of the problems you may be having, some of the minimum specs. And then if you need some additional support, you have the ability to log a support call. Come in here, you run through the items, put in your email address. That'll contact the support team that are available 24/7, and they will respond back to you within 15 to 20 minutes with a human response to kind of see if they can assist. Primarily the problems that we face are the same type, so our guys are very proficient in understanding the problem types and able to resolve them. So I hope this video has given you a better understanding of a deep dive into the settings, how to control your devices, how to access the support services to kind of get the best from your user experience. Thanks very much for watching.